Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. So I wanted to provide just a brief update, if I may. Right now, we are already into the early days of October 2023. My goodness, time flies, does it not? Time flies when one has fun. And I'm so surprised and taken aback by just how quickly time seems to be flying, while at the same time being reminded of how many things, a lot of things that have been happening over the course of, say, the past few months at least. So just to give a quick update again for those who may be interested. So we're just in to the beginning parts of October, and my family and I are still more or less getting settled into our new house or into our new living space, as we may mention sometime before. We did move here from Japan, and we've been living here for about 2.5 months, almost 3 months now. So I think it's been overall, it's been a very positive and enjoyable experience and a wonderful adventure for myself, for me and my family. So there have been a few bumps along the road, I'll admit, but I think overall it's been quite a pleasant adventure indeed. So hopefully it'll continue on with the continuing adventures, as it were, of the Beppu family in Los Angeles and the like. I did actually have to go back to Japan. I went to Japan actually last week for a little bit for just to take care of a few matters and work and other things. So I was there actually for a week, but I then came back. So it's been a bit busy on my end over the past couple weeks or so. So I've been, but it's been a good busy. So I can't complain. And I must always be mindful and just remind myself of really the great fortune that has I've been very fortunate to have been able to come across over the course of, say, these past few weeks, months, and years. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for people who have continued to support this channel and to watch the videos and to have reached out to me. I should point out a few things, which is again in October. So I was very recently gifted this lovely set, and it's a Scream Factory, Shout Factory set. So I want to say thank you very much for this gift. I'm very happy with it. I've seen these films before, but this is my first time to get them in the 4K releases. So Ultra HD 4K. I have them on the Blu-ray set from several years back, which was a big deal at the time, and still is, I think, in terms of physical media. But now we have these new 4K releases from about, I think, a year or so ago. These are the Halloween films, or specifically Halloween, the Halloween 4K collection, 1995 to 2002. So this includes Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, the theatrical cut, and the so-called producer's cut, and also Halloween H2O, and then Halloween Resurrection. So it's a very interesting set of films. I actually was very fortunate over my life to have been able to see some of these films in the theater. So I remember seeing Halloween H2O in the theater, and then also Halloween Resurrection as well. I didn't manage to catch Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers in the theater, unfortunately. So, but I did catch up with it on videotape, on VHS rental. But so there you are. So those are the three films, plus the special features that were included with this lovely set. And I know that there are the other films released by Scream Factory on the 4K releases there. So Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Halloween 4, and Halloween 5. So and so I'm very happy about those. But I've always been a big fan of the Halloween films. I don't know if I've mentioned them a lot over the course of this channel, but I've always been a big fan of Halloween. I think when I might have mentioned it over. Maybe I did mention. I'm not sure. If I didn't, please forgive me for my very poor memory. But when I was a kid, again, I was born in 1979, so I grew up in the 80s, and so This was in the sweet spot of VHS rental days, and I have very vivid memories of watching the film Halloween 2. And Halloween 2 in particular had a big effect on me. And I think I saw that way too young, but even now it sends shivers up and down the spine for me. And then you combine that with having seen Halloween 3 as a kid. And if you know Halloween 3, you may know what I'm referring to. There are some moments in there that are kind of, how should I put it, uh, life altering to the nth degree. So let me say that again. Watching Halloween 3 when back in the day, whenever it was in the early 80s, so I would have been, gosh, how old would I have been when I watched that on VHS tape? It would have been like, you know, 5, 6 years old, something like that. Watching Halloween 3 at that age. Life altering to the nth degree. And I mean that wholeheartedly and very positively and with a great degree and feeling of respect and gratitude. And I dare say that I mean, I can say this with a lot of confidence regarding many of the other films that I've seen over the course of my long cinema loving life. But I would say that watching Halloween 3 when I did, as lucky as I was to have been able to have discovered Halloween 3 at that early age, I think in many ways solidified and made permanent my love of cinema in a lot of ways. It's one of these things where you think, what the heck is going on before my very eyes? Why is this happening? What is happening here? And so it turned my very young brain to mush, and I was oh so deliriously enthused about it, delightfully so. So, what a great film that is, Halloween 3. And then, of course, the series continued. And I must say that maybe in terms of the generational, or maybe where I was again, I was so taken with, say, Halloween. And of course, what am I saying? Of course, before I move on, I should say too that I've mentioned John Carpenter films on this channel before. I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter films. And again, those also were huge touchstones in my life growing up. And part of that landscape was watching Halloween. You know, there are some films in my life, and I'm sure you feel the same way as well, but there are just some films that in my life where I saw them so many times, and maybe starting from a young age, that I cannot remember a time not having seen these films. In other words, I can't remember the first time I saw a number of films. I mean, they've been that fundamental to me. So I mentioned, for instance, Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock film Psycho. I can't remember a time why I didn't see that film. And the same thing with a film like Halloween. I can't remember. And so it's a really such a fundamentally important film. And I think what I marvel at is it has such a, a, a wonderfully constructed way in, and it's so perfect in the way it allows us into the world, and then it just unleashes what it has to offer. So, but again, you don't need me to say that there have been countless great analyses and breakdowns and reviews and interpretations of that wonderful, remarkable film, head and shoulders above anything I could ever hope to achieve. So, but yeah, so that, and then of course the rest, as they say, is history. But and then of course, yes, I was going to say too that when I was getting a little bit older, again in the later '80s, I remember the first time I saw the trailer for Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And again, this was in the mid '80s, or getting into the latter half of the '80s. And so, from my point of view, it was a long time between the release of Halloween 3 and the trailer for Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And I remember, what was it? I must have caught it again, it wasn't like I would go to the theaters and see it. Rather, it would be just renting VHS tapes, going to the VHS rental store, watching movies, and then watching the tail end or the very beginning of those VHS tapes, the bunch of the trailers that would come out. And one of those VHS rentals had the trailer for Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. That was so exciting. Watch that trailer. I remember around this time, maybe it was a little bit later also, but I just was so thrilled when I saw Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, that trailer. And then when, maybe it was a little bit later when when the trailer for The Exorcist 3 was made available, again, similarly through VHS runners. Oh, those were the days. Those are the, I also had that same feeling about watching the trailer for Dario Argento's opera. Wow, mind blowing stuff. And then, speaking of which, when I saw the trailer for Exorcist 3, it was called Legion, The Exorcist 3. So that was really cool to me. But of course, as we know, the theatrical release then changed the title to The Exorcist 3. But of course, now we have these great releases in terms of alternate versions that have now at last been made available. But that's a tale for another day. But Halloween 4, yeah. So Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, that trailer was really exciting. And then I tried to catch up with it. It was a bit of a difficult rental, if I remember correctly. It was very popular when it was first released on VHS rental. You went there, but it was already rented out, and you had to wait a little bit. So I remember having to wait a little bit. The anticipation made even more heightened by not being able to rent it the first night it was made it was released. So, but that was really cool. So I must say that, and then maybe. I find myself, if I had to rank the films, the Halloween films, I don't know if Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers would be top of my list, but uh, it's it has a certain charm and a certain je ne sais quoi type of lovability about it. And I should really talk about, like, wow, it's really amazing in terms the role of Donald Pleasance, and this whole mythology that has been growing and growing and growing since actually a very key moment in Halloween 2, and just built and built and built. So it's really fascinating. And then Halloween 5 came about almost like suddenly. I just I was feeling, so all of a sudden it was just, oh, now Halloween 5 is in the video stores now. So it almost seemed to creep up on everyone. I just came out of nowhere from my point. And then you'd see all these Halloween 5 pictures on, say, the Fangoria magazine front covers, and it'd be really fascinating. But you think, my goodness, oh my goodness, Michael Myers' face seems a little bit. He seems a little bit. His chin seems a little bit skinnier. I mean, is he on some kind of diet or something like that? So the mask was very, very different looking. I remember. So I'm, and that's one of the, I think, the charming points or infamous points. I don't know, depending on where one falls on the pendulum of Halloween mask analysis. But yeah, so the Halloween 5, the Revenge of Michael Myers, that was interesting, and how that really kind of set up or followed through with, or didn't follow through with, all of the some of the plot points that were set up in Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers, and then it went into this really interesting. Uh, I mean, I used the phrase WTF quite frequently, or on occasion, but it was a maybe one of the, yeah, it was a really, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers is in many ways one of the ultimate WTF films. And let me leave it at that, again, for the benefit of those who have not yet seen this very fascinating work, which is called Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. But my goodness. And then we go into uh, the Curse of Michael Myers, or what was it? I remember seeing it. It was, I think it was called The Origin of Michael Myers at one point in one of the trailers, or Halloween 6, or The Curse of Michael Myers. And then it was just, I remember seeing that for the first time on VHS tape, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. And I must admit, I was, I felt like I was adrift in a sea of confusion. What's going on? I kind of was following it, but I'm not quite sure what was going on. And it it was in that sea of limbo of um, I mean, I mentioned earlier about how Halloween 3 joyfully turned my brain into mush. I would say watching Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers for the first time on VHS maybe in a perplexed way turned my brain into mush. You know, Halloween films have this really wonderful way of turning my brain to mush. And I mean that in a complimentary way. Although I must say that Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, it was a kind of mushy goo that was somewhat perplexing. Let me put it that way, but not without its merits. And I think those merits uh, really became more augmented for me over time, especially when the producer's cut at long last became officially available, and which is again part of the official releases from way back, and now with these 4K, these new re-releases are on 4K. This continuing tradition of the availability of the producer's cut. And again, it's an interesting, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's an interesting comparison to try to watch what one prefers, the theatrical cut of Curse of Michael Myers or the producer's cut. I kind of go back and forth, to be perfectly honest. I like certain aspects of the producer's cut, but then I think, or the quote-unquote producer's cut, but I think, oh, it's interesting. I can kind of see what the follow-through is, but when I see what the follow-through is, I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, but anyway, so it's one of those interesting worlds that is the world of Michael Myers, and I love how Michael Myers is standing there in some of the scenes in the Curse of Michael Myers, especially the producer like that. It's amazing. So, but anyway, yes. So, and then there was some great excitement in the air when you had Scream and Kevin Williamson and this whole huge momentum that seemed to shift the pendulum forward back into Hollywood mainstream and horror cinema. And so it was I mean, from a consumer's perspective, back in the day, it was really exciting. And so in this atmosphere, you'd have a film like Halloween H2O that came out, which was marketed so well, I think, and it was starring Jamie Lee Curtis and a number of other it was a great cast, and it had a very interesting setup and a very interesting design. Steve Miner, right, is the director. So, for those of you who know horror films, especially the early days of Friday the 13th, that has a huge pedigree. So it was very striking. I must say that maybe I think I was very excited about Halloween H2O, although I must say that maybe over time, I'm not sure if it's for me personally, I'm not sure if its star has shone as brightly for me over time as it might have shone upon its immediate release for me. But again, I see its merits very much so. And then we turn to I think, the very fascinating film that is Halloween Resurrection. It's almost like two films in one, if you know the film, in terms of what happens at the opening and then what happens in sort of the bulk of the film. So it's a very fascinating, some might say departure, some might say continuation. I'm not sure. I find it to be a very interesting, again, perplexing, I think, is a really a good adjective to apply here. I'm particularly fascinated by the puffiness of Michael Myers' hair and his mask, and also the pronounced nature of the eyebrows. I think it's quite striking indeed. So it could be perhaps, maybe if I'm not mistaken, maybe Halloween Resurrection's Michael Myers mask is perhaps the most eyebrow pronounced mask in the series' history. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going out on a limb too much here. But if anyone who knows the history of Michael Myers' masks, if you may want to agree or disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. But I think it's up there in terms of, has anyone ever done a list like that? The top eyebrow pronounced Michael Myers mask in order of rank. I'm sure Halloween Resurrection would definitely be it would be contender for top spot, number one or number two, that's for sure. But maybe that versus Halloween H2O, I don't know. But anyway, so yes, and then it's not included. I think they haven't, as of the time of this video, I don't think they've been given any 4K physical media treatment yet. But there's the Rob Zombie films, Halloween and Halloween 2, which are themselves really fascinating. I find myself over the years, I go back and forth with the Rob Zombie films. I find myself sometimes, again, depending on my mood, maybe I'm totally just not sure how to take them and how to absorb them on the one hand, but then on the other hand, again, depending on the time of day, perhaps, I find myself utterly fascinated by what he was trying to do, and especially to learning as the years pass, just the kinds of situation and the kinds of pressure and the actual circumstances during which Rob Zombie and company were making these films. It's a very fascinating feat, and regardless of what how one ultimately might feel at the end of the day in terms of the content and the results of the films that are Halloween and Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie takes and the interpretations, it is without a doubt a very memorable and unique take on the myth. So and it has a means of, I think, striking a certain chord, which I think has in many ways the ability to link the story arc of this character that is Michael Myers within the concept of, again, a modern day viewing of the American myth. I don't know if that makes any sense. Now, I don't want to go into too many details because I don't want to, for the benefit of those who have not yet seen Halloween or Halloween 2. But again, I go back and forth. It's a very fascinating dialogue, I think, that one can have with those films. Really, really interesting stuff indeed. And then, of course, yes, we go into the most recent films. What's it? David Gordon Green, Blumhouse, and Halloween and Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. And so I was able, actually, very, very recently, actually maybe a few weeks ago, from the time of the making of this video, in fact, to watch Halloween Ends for the first time. So I had seen Halloween on Blu-ray, and I had seen Halloween Kills also on Blu-ray. So I didn't see them in the theater, and I saw them somewhat after the fact. And then Halloween Ends, I saw way, way after the fact. So this was only this year, and also on not in the theater. So, but I must say that I was I don't know if I'm not quite there in terms of the trilogy overall. I mean, there's some things that I think I'm kind of meh on, but I must say that maybe thinking back on it, I was more. I heard so many bad things about Halloween Ends before I'd seen it. Heard so many bad things, but when I saw it, I was maybe expecting the worst, but I came out not thinking it was that bad. In fact, I really enjoyed it in the sense that it felt like it was trying to capture a type of spirit of John Carpenter's 80s works, in particular a film called Christine. And so I look at Halloween Ends not like a Halloween film, but rather like a film that is uh, trying to channel the spirit of John Carpenter's film that is the adaptation of the Stephen King novel, Christine. So, all the way down to the character, an even named character in that film, Arnie Cunningham. Very close similarity in terms of naming. But in any event, yes, Christine, too, which is a film that I've also, I think, spoken about on this channel. A film that I enjoy quite dearly. But yeah, so I must say that I think while I'm still the jury is out for me in terms of how I feel about those three films, the recent David Gordon Green directed films. I must say that I think there are some aspects of Halloween Ends that I really enjoyed, and there were a lot of aspects also of Halloween Kills that I really enjoyed very much. I mean, Halloween Kills, um, you know, how do I explain it? Have you ever played Nintendo or Super Nintendo? Well, there's a game in Super Nintendo called Contra 3. It's one of these two-dimensional scrolling games, and you're like a soldier, and you're running through these complexes, and then you're trying to shoot down aliens and monsters in these complexes as you proceed from level to level to level. And you have these guns, and then you can power up with various guns like plasma guns, and then you can power up with like double guns or missiles or rockets or something like that. Well, it was like there's some moments in the game Contra 3 where you're playing it, and suddenly you get these power ups that suddenly allow you to shoot like all these things in various directions all at once. And that's how I felt when I saw Halloween Kills. It was like Michael Myers is just what's the phrase, off the leash. Just stand the heck back. Just get out of the way. If Michael Myers is walking out of some kind of burning building, just I don't know, I don't care what you're doing. My strong suggestion is if you see Michael Myers walking in the direction, just stop what you're doing and just walk the other way, because especially if he's in Halloween Kills mode, just absolutely like Contra, power up to the max. He's just going like wow, all this stuff. But anyway, so uh, and then like well anyway. But anyway, so yeah. I think there are many things I could say about Halloween Kills. I don't know if I have I'm not sure if I have the knowledge base enough to be able to speak about Halloween Kills on this channel. Maybe one day, but it's a very interesting work indeed. But speaking of which, I think right he there's a new film out right now, if I'm not mistaken, which is called what is it? Exorcist. Exorcist. Uh, Exorcist, a believer, right? So I saw the trailer for that. It looked interesting, but yeah. So, but I haven't had a chance to watch that. But I did watch maybe in. I watched once again for the upteenth time film, which is directed by William Peter Blatty, who's known as the author of the novel that is called The Exorcist. And among other things, William Peter Blatty was a writer and also a director, a film director. He directed a film which is called The Exorcist 3, which I mentioned before, which is a great film, by the way. Really quirky, weird, with a wonderful central performance by George C. Scott. A wonderful performance by George C. Scott. And there's this great rapport between George C. Scott and Ed Flanders, another actor in this film. And there's a key, I don't want to go into too much detail about The Exorcist, but there's such a great piece of dialogue about a carp, which is so cool. But anyway, that's Exorcist 3. But that was directed by William Peter Blatty, based upon his novel, which is called Legion. But William Peter Blatty also directed a film before this, several years prior to The Exorcist 3, and it's a film which is been given a number of titles over the course of its great release history. Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, but I think it's known more commonly these days, especially with its physical media releases and the like. It's known as The Ninth Configuration, and it stars Jason Miller and Stacy Keach and also Ed Flanders and other. It has some really interesting connectivity with The Exorcist. So in fact, it could be said to be in many ways a type of spiritual sequel to the film and the story The Exorcist, maybe perhaps in a way that, arguably speaking, the film The Exorcist to the Heretic, or Exorcist to the Heretic, in the eyes of many, was not. But in any event, yes, maybe because it's October and Halloween spirit and watching scary movies, and also the David Gordon Green and the Halloween films, and this new Exorcist film is now in the theaters. I was inspired to rewatch the film The Ninth Configuration. And my goodness, if you haven't seen The Ninth Configuration, oh my goodness, you know, that's a sort of I really should talk about that film on this channel as well. That's a sort of film where um, you if you're watching that film for the first time, oh my goodness, it's just it has this way of being completely it's like, just what's the phrase, it's sort of a blindside type of watch. It creeps up on you in the way that it applies humor and comedy and absurdity. And there are moments I think that are quite shocking and very almost aggressively, maybe for lack of a better phrase, aggressively politically incorrect. But I think that's part of its nature in terms of when it was made and shot. But also, it has this intensity, warts and all, sort of raw intensity, which I think unearths itself as the film progresses in a way that's quite mind-boggling, and it's very personal, and also it has this way of seeming so absurd that it sort of upends this whole idea of expectation, and it goes real deep into this notion of faith and um, divine intervention, and also the basis upon which in everyday living, the basis upon which one can either see or not see the existence of God, and it's played out in a very grand way in the film. It's so wonderful, such a wonderful film. So yes, so in many ways, a type of spiritual sequel to The Exorcist. In case you're interested, if you've seen The Exorcist or not, I'm not sure. If you haven't seen The Exorcist, by the way, I don't know. I just also was able to get, was it the 4K disc of The Exorcist? It's somewhere around here. I don't know, but it's really interesting stuff indeed. Although I must say that I'm kind of disappointed a little bit in the cover art for that. I got the standard 4K release. I'm kind of disappointed in the cover, not in terms of the image, but I was hoping for, sometimes I mean, I love physical media, don't get me wrong, but every once in a while I think, my goodness, this cover art is a little bit, I wish maybe they could have done something more. But anyway, that's another discussion for another day. But I haven't yet seen the 4K release of The Exorcist, so I'm looking forward to watching that. Hopefully in the next couple of days. I don't know, but there's a lot on my plate in terms of watches, because I also was able to get the Criterion releases that I wasn't able to get last week because I was out of town. So just hopped over to the local Barnes and Noble and just got these. Haven't been able to break them out of the plastic wrapping yet because I just got them a few hours ago, in fact. So I'm very excited for this. I'm particularly excited for revisiting this film, La Bamba. This is another film, coming back full circle, I suppose, to the time that I was a kid growing up in the 80s. This is another huge film growing up. It's had a lot of play, and it had a lot of marketing and a lot of attention given to it in TV and the like. So this is such a big deal. I remember this. And then it's again one of those films that helped to solidify my cinema journey along the La Bamba. So that's so cool. As well as gosh. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm rambling. I'm so sorry. I guess that's what happens when there's no script. So I apologize for this. But anyway, my dear friends, that's the state of things in terms of where I am right now. So it's at the beginning of October. So I know there's a lot of maybe horror film watches in the air and the like. I'm also very excited about it. I'm going to try to maybe fit those in. I'm not sure to what extent I'll be able to in terms of the context of this channel and the like, but I'll see what I can do. But in the meantime, I'm still working through the Criterion releases. I've just finished talking about the Pasolini 101 set, so thank you very much for sticking around. I know I made a number of videos on that, so maybe too many, so I apologize, but it's a really great set. So thank you. And I'm just about finished talking about um, the Renown Western set also from Criterion. So that is also a lot of fun. And then just going through that, I've already made the video for the release of Breathless and also One False Move and Dim Sum. And there's some other sets along the way, as well as October. My goodness, so many titles from Criterion. That's really exciting stuff indeed. And then I had this kind of grand ambition and design for a certain thing. Well, anyway, maybe I shouldn't talk too much. Maybe I should keep quiet on a few things again. I don't want to say something and then not deliver at the end of the day. But there are a few things that are swinging around in my mind in terms of this channel. And of course also being reminded too of the Cronenberg works and the De Palma discussions and the Angelopoulos discussions. Speaking of which, I also was able to get a new release of the film, the Cronenberg film, which is Crimes of the Future. That's another film I haven't spoken about on this channel yet, but the more I see this film, Crimes of the Future, the more I'm more and more convinced that it is, for me, a huge game changer in the way I'm viewing Cronenberg's films. It's really I can't wait. But anyway, and also too, yes, it's now beginning of October, and I cannot wait for the release of the Martin Scorsese film, which is called Killers of the Flower Moon. I cannot wait for this. I'm so excited for this. I read the book Killers of the Flower Moon, so I'm somewhat familiar with the story based on the writing in that book. And if it's going to be adhering to this story, it is a very shocking and very intense story indeed. So cannot wait for this, and it seems like there's a lot of momentum behind it in terms of the cast and the great pedigree behind it, and so oh my goodness, I can't wait for this. So anyway, so many things going on here, so so very, very exciting stuff indeed, and the like. And oh gosh, I was also able at last to get the Severin release of Blood for Dracula with the CD as well. So that's another film that I remember seeing. Gosh, I remember seeing Blood for Dracula for the first time on a VHS tape, and wow, what a memorable film that is. So, and it, for those of you who know, of course, it had a Criterion Laserdisc release and then a Criterion DVD release back in the day during the early days of DVDs, and now we have a Severin release. So I was able at last to get that, and I've just been able to go through not all but most of the special features on that, which is on the Blu-ray disc portion, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a pretty cool stuff. So it's wonderful to see this. What was I saying? So anyway, yes. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Let me go to sleep because now it's quite late. So I'm so sorry for this. So this is meant to be just a nice update of sorts, but I hope it wasn't too taxing on your patience. If it was, I apologize sincerely. That wasn't my intention. My intention was merely just to say hello and greetings and well wishes and best regards to you, my dear friends, as we enter into the weekend and beyond. So I will hopefully be in touch very soon, but in the meantime, please continue to be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including for those who are interested in Halloween films, and maybe some horror films, or not. If horror is not your cup of tea, that's okay. Non-horror films are also fun to watch as well. So, but in any event, my dear friends, I hope this video has found you well, and that we may see each other again very soon. Until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. Or to quote a bit from the film Halloween 3, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it.